coal trucks took up where the state rail fleet left off from midnight last night. The trucks carry about 25 tonnes each, just a fraction of more than 6,000 tonnes that can be hauled on one coal train. But with coal exports running at record levels, some deliveries had to go ahead. Several hundred truckloads went to Kooragang Coal Loader and Port Waratah. Officials said stocks were more than enough to offset a 24-hour interruption. However, the real effect will be felt over the next 2 weeks as existing piles are shipped out. The stoppage was initiated by the Australian Railways Union, which claims it's been left out of national talks on the formation of a national rail corporation. ARU spokesman Mick Schmitzer says the disruption had given the union greater involvement in a process which will lead to extensive job cuts.
We want to know just what redundancy packages and retraining and all the rest that can be sorted out in that type of thing.
Freight rail services are expected to resume normal timetables from midnight, but there's no guarantee that further industrial action isn't on the agenda. The ARU is disturbed by state rail threats to cut an industry allowance to members as a result of this stoppage.
They're threatening to take about a $50-odd pay out of each bloke each fortnight that participate in the strike action today.
And if that happens?
Well, if that happens, then certainly there will be further industrial action.
The threat of hospital closures hasn't passed, according to trade unionists who met in Newcastle today. They will stage 2 protest meetings to voice their concerns about cutbacks. The first will be held next Tuesday when the Premier, Nick Greiner, is the keynote speaker at the Hunter Valley Research Foundation dinner. A second protest is scheduled for the 30th of July, when it's hoped supporters will march through Newcastle streets.
No, the fight is only just starting, and at the meeting this morning there was a firm commitment that while we have these rallies coming up, that they only the start of the struggle.
Wallsend is one of the 3 hospitals earmarked for possible closure. A barbecue was held today to raise money for their fighting fund and to lift morale.
In what we are trying to do, and that's just keep our hospital and every hospital in the Hunter area safe.
In a further development, Labor MP Richard Face says another section of the Hunter Area Health Service will be axed. The Logistics Support Service at Gateshead is the central supply and purchasing office for hospitals in the Newcastle area. He says it will be closed and 100 employees will have to be absorbed into other hospitals.
Well, according to my sources are that they will be wound up after $3 million invested in it, and they've been going 12 months. And what I've seen today, they have a very real reason to continue to exist.
The head of the Hunter Area Health Service, Dr Owen James, and Chairman John Varnum had separate meetings today with the Health Minister Ron Phillips and the Director General of the Health Department, Bernie Amos. A spokesman for the Minister said the discussions were helpful in clarifying some of the issues. He said the Minister will meet with the full board of the Hunter Area Health Service in Sydney on Monday. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
After a long struggle for life, Penny Hill died in the John Hunter Hospital early yesterday morning. The 21-year-old had been airlifted to Newcastle from Coolah after being found unconscious by the road 2 weeks ago. Police believe Ms Hill had been brutally bashed, then dumped. But Detective Senior Constable Bob Linger from Coolah Police says the questions of who bashed her and why remain unanswered. The detective says because Ms Hill had arrived in Coolah only 2 days before the bashing to begin work as a nanny, she probably wouldn't have had time to develop friends or enemies. Constable Linger says now the case is being treated as murder and a team of officers from Sydney has been brought in. In Ms Hill's hometown of Narrabri, her family and friends are in shock. Ms Hill's uncle, Dennis Bateman, said by phone today that the most baffling part for the family is why anyone would have bashed her. To help solve that mystery, Mr Bateman has appealed to anyone with the smallest clue that might help the investigations to contact police. Ms Hill's funeral will be held in Narrabri on Thursday. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Kiko Hatari isn't a schoolteacher, but with results like this, she could be. Kiko is here on a 9-month cultural exchange visit. As part of it, she's teamed with teachers at the Maitland Public School to provide a Japanese study program. The students from kindergarten to year 6 have been taught a lot about Japan, its customs, people, cities and language. Many can hold a conversation. Apart from this display of Japanese entertainment, the school is holding an art and craft expo. Kiko will take home fond memories of a time here.
Everything. This Japanese expo is the best.
The school's principal is delighted with the exercise.
Learning can be fun, and Kiko has made it such an enjoyable experience.
Dennis Tyler's worked for 10 years behind the scenes at Police Rescue Squad headquarters, manning the phones and listening to the radio. Although he suffers from a painful and progressively debilitating illness, he's still considered one of the linchpins of the outfit. Police Minister Ted Pickering honoured his extraordinary commitment, presenting him with a Community Service Award.
I'm proud of. A little bit surprised, because all I do is answer telephones to the radios.
Police Rescue Squad members aren't quite as dismissive of the role Dennis has played.
I don't think the squad could have functioned as well as it has in the past and the present without the help of Dennis.
The Police Rescue Squad is to be phased out over an undisclosed period by the state government. Dennis doesn't know what he'll do then, but in the meantime, he's happy enough where he is.
You'll stay with it for a while?
Yeah, mate, until it closes, yeah.
The Liberal Party won the last state election by a narrow margin, but the opposition is still contesting the result. The leader of the Labor Party, Bob Carr, today announced there will be a challenge to the election outcome in Maitland. However, he would not reveal the grounds for their action. Although the Liberal member Peter Blackmore won the seat by only 345 votes, he says he's not concerned about the Labor Party's latest challenge. The ALP is also contesting the result in the entrance, where Liberal Bob Graham won the seat by 116 votes. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Sharon Casey says she'll never step foot in the Nautilus gym again. Last week, after a workout, she wanted a sauna. She walked through a men's change room to the only sauna in the place. There were no male or female signs, but within minutes she was ushered out. The reason, according to management, Sharon Casey was the wrong sex.
It's not right. They shouldn't have the power to do that to me because I'm female.
The owner of the centre would not comment on camera but refuted any claims of sexism, saying this was a problem he simply wasn't aware of. Nautilus has been in operation for more than 20 years. Up until 1980, it was primarily a men's club. Late this afternoon, management apologised to Sharon Casey and apparently has now placed a sign above the sauna advising it is for men only. The club says it will not consider reducing fees for women, despite the fact that females cannot use one of its facilities. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Art Express, the popular travelling exhibition that features the cream of the works done for the higher school certificate, has always had a healthy hunter representation. 9 hunter students were featured in this year's show. But Brian Allen, the president of the Art Teachers Association, says the exhibition has never been shown in the Newcastle Region Art Gallery.
The director of the gallery won't allow Art Express to be shown. I believe the reason is that they are students, they are not established artists.
The director of 11 years, David Bradshaw, admits there hasn't been any student work shown at the gallery, but he believes there is a place for their work.
I think there's a place for every sort of exhibition of visual arts, and I would like to see as many as possible. As I pointed out, I think there are other alternative venues.
Mr Bradshaw says one of the major reasons Art Express hasn't been shown at his venue is that the gallery's program is prepared 12 months or more in advance.
We still haven't heard from them about dates for, if they even wanted to approach us again, dates for 1992.
But Brian Allen refutes the too late to apply argument.
I don't think that's a valid reason at all, because I'm sure that we could give him specific dates.
The gallery has also been slammed by local artists. Alan Chalmer has exhibited internationally, including a show to 20 million people in China, but he says he can't get into his hometown gallery.
I think the gallery has a role to play, and I think that one of the problems that the gallery has is in fact that it doesn't see local artists as being people that they should exhibit.
Now, there are probably hundreds of local people who feel that they have every right to be shown in the gallery. Okay. But we can't really accommodate everybody.
Newcastle City Council is to hold a review into the gallery's operations following one staff member resigning and another being transferred. Mr Bradshaw says due to council policy he can't comment on the forthcoming review, but says the gallery is fulfilling its role.
The Falcons had trouble dealing with the towering North Melbourne front line earlier this month when the sides clashed at Broadmeadow. The likes of Scott Fisher, Paul Maley and Ray Borner are always hard to handle, and the Falcons will go into the game severely undergunned in the height department. Lanky forward Neil Turner has been sidelined by a sprained ankle, and while the Falcons are sure to miss him, the Giants certainly won't. Newcastle lost by 11 when they hosted the Giants. They'll do well to stay that close at the Glass House. The Newcastle Knights also have some injury worries, with half Steve Fulmer almost certain to drop out of the side to play Balmain. The two teams fought out a thrilling 12-all draw at the ISC in March, and several Newcastle players will be looking to regain that sort of form at Leichhardt. Written off for most of the season, the Tigers have shown glimpses of their real potential in recent weeks, and a win to the Knights would be a hard-earned feather in the cap of caretaker coach David Waite.
Three years ago, the Gallery of Victoria and the Art Gallery of New South Wales began collecting Australian photographic works. This exhibition, sponsored by Hallmark Cards, shows 56 of those prints by 20 varied artists. Typical of the works is this piece by Anne Zahalka, which parodies the blonde, bronze Aussie beachgoer seen in most paintings of Bondi Beach. Like the majority of photos, it was staged in a studio.
There's a move away from the landscape and back into the studio in a lot of cases, with photographers stage managing shots and creating almost like film stills in some cases, where they handle the costumes and the sets and they're working in a studio.
The photographs display a wide diversity of styles and approaches, characteristic of Australian contemporary photography.
So do we have a lot of talented photographers in Australia?
Yes, I think we do, of world standing.
Ernie Bigelow's father was diagnosed with lung cancer in 1984. It was his wish to spend his last months surrounded by family and friends at his son's home. As his health deteriorated, the family couldn't manage him. Finally, he was admitted to hospital.
That was a very frightening thing for him to go to hospital, and it was very difficult for him to go, but it was necessary, it had to be. There was no support system to enable him to stay at home.
Ernie's father died in hospital on Christmas Day 1984.
It would certainly have helped Dad if it was able to be of such a quality that he could stay home. It would have saved him a lot of anguish in his last 2 weeks of life.
Ernie attended today's opening of the palliative care unit attached to Belmont Hospital. 3 nurses will be on call around the clock to provide pain and symptom relief for patients who wish to die at home. 25 trained volunteers will also be available to help the families who care for their terminally ill relatives.
A lot of people now are wishing to remain at home to die with dignity in the care of their family and friends, and this service will enable them to do so.
Charity functions and donations have raised $47,000 for the unit, which will provide a free service to those who require it in the area. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
John Foreman is a young man with talent literally dripping from his fingertips. Just 19 years old, tonight he'll take the stage alongside one of Australia's jazz greats, Don Burrows. He's understandably full of nervous energy.
We haven't had a rehearsal or anything. I don't know whether I'm supposed to say this or not, but you know, it's going to be quite spontaneous, so I'm not entirely sure exactly what's going to happen. But what I try to do is to turn the nervousness into excitement.
It's that spontaneous feel that attracted John to the world of jazz. It was a wise decision, and he's come a long way since the days when he jammed with a certain NBN reporter at Katara High.
And I've played in Train of Thought with Scott Bevan and the rock thing in Newcastle. But jazz, for me, is appealing because it's probably the most, arguably, one of the more creative styles of music because you're improvising.
Those impressed by tonight's performance will no doubt be keen to get their hands on the upcoming John Foreman album. That Jazz Thing features 10 of the country's best young jazz musicians and should be out by the end of the year.
Race out and pick it up. Don't buy it, just pick it up.
The game started at a cracking pace with plenty of opportunities for both teams. Austral's keeper Simon Devertak was heroic and kept the home side in the game early on. A free kick midway through the first half gave the Australs a chance to convert, and Ralph Meyer made no mistake. Blacktown always looked likely to hit back, but the finishing skills were nowhere to be seen. That miss was followed by another. Then, minutes later, yet another. That was the story of the entire encounter. The Demons had enough chances to win a dozen games, but in the end, a tiny home crowd was left cheering a hard-fought 1-0 Australs victory. Team colours were being displayed with considerable pride during the opening ceremony at the Broadmeadow Basketball Stadium today. The NIB Games have brought together 300 top junior athletes from the North Coast, Illawarra and of course the Hunter. The visitors in particular received a warm welcome. But they all came with competition on their minds, and the surfers in particular couldn't wait to attack the clean 1 metre conditions on offer at Dixon Park. There were plenty of risks being taken, and the emphasis was on radical manoeuvres rather than safe rides to the beach. The Illawarra squad proved too strong in today's encounter, but their Hunter opponents get a chance for revenge tomorrow. The bowlers headed to Lambton, where they put on an energetic performance. Led by 11-year-old Neil Smith, the youngsters displayed polish and precision beyond their years and showed everyone that bowls is not just a game to be enjoyed by those with a touch of grey around the temples. Back at the stadium, the Hunter Academy of Sport girls turned on an impressive display against a physical North Coast outfit. A superior defence gave the locals more scoring opportunities, and they converted that advantage into a 74 points to 50 win. The competition continues tomorrow. Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
Last week, Council decided to approach the Minister about holding a referendum on wards versus a citywide franchise. In this letter, Minister Jerry Peacock urges Council in the strongest terms to hold a referendum in conjunction with the September Council elections. Mr Peacock says he believes the majority of the community is unsure of the implication of a ward system, and therefore it would be unfair of him or the Council to decide the issue. The ward system would divide the city into voting zones. How many zones and the number of aldermen is also in contention. Council has the final say on whether a referendum is held on September the 14th or at a later date, but it's unlikely it will go against the advice of the Minister. Also at last night's council meeting, a plan to bring shoppers back to the city centre. Free 2-hour parking will be introduced in the King and Gibson Street parking stations from September the 1st. To recoup revenue lost, parking charges after 4 hours will increase by 30%. And following in Lake Macquarie's footsteps, $200 on-the-spot fines have been brought in Newcastle for littering, noise, water and air pollution. Recent changes to government legislation gives councils the power to impose immediate fines for more than 30 minor offences. It's still to be decided whether extra staff will be employed to police the legislation.
The Hunter Water Board unanimously approved plans to dump sewage sludge under Merewether 2 weeks ago. Sludge will be the byproduct of the board's new secondary treatment plant at Burwood Beach, due to come online next June. But the project may have hit a snag.
We're seeking legal advice about the legality of the Water Board actually doing what they're doing anyway, and seeking to prevent them by using the law.
Council has also refused to grant the board use of any of its parks, including Mitchell and Henderson parks, considered by the board as potential sites for mine water output wells. Despite the setback, the Water Board is confident the project will go ahead.
We'd still be proceeding with design and pre-construction work, so I don't think it'll really hold us up. We've got, 8 months to get it sorted out, and I think that ought to be enough.